Welcome back to the Pain Game, and today I'm doing my Eubank Jr. versus Conor Benn prediction. And don't forget, I will be there at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium live on the Pain Game YouTube channel, so make sure you tune in on Saturday night for that. And look, everyone's talking about this fight this week. It's probably the biggest fight we're going to have in the UK this year. Even this man, the dad of Eubank Jr., who labelled the fight and his son a disgrace earlier in the week. Apparently, it's not that much of a disgrace that he won't take money to talk about it. And look, the general consensus coming into this fight is, on paper, Eubank Jr. is the favourite, right? He's fought at the higher level, much higher level. He's the bigger guy, quite clearly, and his resume is just a totally different level of fighter to the likes that Conor Benn's fought. And look, in all fighting, boxing, MMA, the old saying is, a good big man beats a good little man, and that is the general thing I'm hearing across a lot of different videos. I understand all that. The one thing I would say that kind of goes against that a little bit for Conor Benn is the unknown in his ceiling. We just don't know. He certainly looked good in fights against lesser competition than Chris Eubank Jr., in my opinion. There is a possibility that he gets on the big stage and he's exposed. But there's also a possibility that he's being underestimated and he gets on the big stage and he shocks everyone, including Chris Eubank Jr. And another issue I've got with, people saying, well, Eubank's fought the better fighters. It's like, well, yeah, but he did lose quite a few of those. And also, when he did fight those higher level opponents, it was quite a few years ago. Let's take a quick look back at Eubank against some of the better opponents he's faced. I mean, this is Chris Eubank against Billy Joe Saunders, which was one of his, well, probably the first big fight he'd been involved in his career. This was 10 years ago. And look, he narrowly lost that fight. Some people had him winning it, to be fair. And ironically, his dad did a terrible job advising him throughout this fight. Quite a sloppy fight. I think he's improved quite a lot since then, to be honest, in terms to technically. I'm not saying he's the best technical boxer now, but this wasn't great, As you can see, it's not peak of boxing, is it? Although one thing Eubank showed at that point was like a lot of will, good engine on him, good chin, and he kept coming all fucking night long. And the thing I will give him is if that fight had gone on longer, I think he probably would have been the one who came out on top. But this is one of the fights that Eubank will have learned from that will help him going into this fight. The issue is, can his body 10 years later still push the way it was able to back then? Let's take a look at his fight against George Groves. This was 7 years ago, and a lot of people had this as a do or die moment with George Groves being a high level guy. Like, really, you can see how slick he is here. He's a very clever boxer. But again, this was George Groves' one fight before he retired. You know what I mean? So if you are going to go on and get to world level and be the guy, this is a fight that Eubank really had to win. And unfortunately for him, he didn't. You see here a lot of fans from Groves. Groves was a smarter fighter, in my opinion, and he understood the range better. And he went first a lot of the time. He was just getting his shots off first, and Eubank just wasn't smart enough, to be honest with you. And you see, as the fight deteriorated, I mean, I'll be honest, Eubank did again, like he did with Billy Joe. He showed hot. He showed that, that good chin, that engine, and he tried to pour it on. But again, technically, look at that. It's not fantastic. Do you know what I mean? It's messy work. He was just beaten by the better boxer. It's fucking madness, to be honest with you. Like, I mean, if we get this in this event, we'll be laughing, because to be fair to Eubank, as sloppy as some of this is, it's fucking entertaining. But again, that was 7 years ago, right? Like, that was Chris, I think, 28 years old, in his athletic prime. He's not quite the same fighter now, in my opinion. A lot of people would have said this fight is one of the best fights from Eubank against James DeGale. Obviously a very high level fighter, although right at the end of his career. And Eubank put a fucking beating on him. Look, and this is a ferocious version of Eubank, who's all over DeGale here. Definitely one of the biggest and best wins of his career. This was my favorite version of Chris Eubank Jr. ever. This guy Yildirim had also fought, I think he fought Canelo maybe later in his career after fighting Eubank, but nobody had finished him up until this point. I don't even think he'd been beaten. And Eubank was just light. Look at that shot, that uppercut. And that is a shot that Conor Benn will have to watch out for, right? Conor Benn being the shorter guy, Eubank does have a decent uppercut, and he likes to throw it a lot. shot. Eubank just looked at his absolute sharpest I've ever seen him. I've never seen him look this good since then either. He looked fucking brilliant. And the one thing you will say is Eubank's game, like back in the day especially, was very fucking game. And he backed his chin and he drops this bastard. Fucking hell, son. So that was the best of Eubank, right? Yes, it was 5, 6, 7 years ago. And we're going to get on to what people consider the worst of Eubank. First, I'm going to take a look at the best of Conor Benn. Now, the issue with this is a lot of people are like, well, he hadn't failed the drugs test at this point and he looked worse after that. We'll get to that. This is against Chris Algieri, who was about 36 at the time. Conor Benn much younger, probably about 25 when he fought Algieri. So, there was an age advantage, but there was a massive experience discrepancy in favour of Algieri, to be fair. And that body shot right there is something I really like about Conor Benn's game. He's got real good body shots. And look, this is at a lighter weight class. People will say, well, Chris will take them, but it's still good. My favourite thing about Conor Benn in comparison to Eubank is probably the way he throws shots. Now, the problem with it is he commits with everything. And when you commit, you can overcommit, right? And you can be punished for that. But it's fucking fun to watch, right? It's do or die boxing. And I do really enjoy the way he fights. And if you watch Benn here, he does use head movement quite decently well. And when he's entering, and that he landed 2 shots there, one to the body, then he went upstairs, sends him flying. In a fight where he was expected to be, a lot less experienced because he didn't allow the older, more experienced guy to control the fight. He went in there and controlled that fight from the get-go. And that is something he really is going to have to do against Chris Eubank Jr. early on, because he's in his athletic prime and Eubank is getting older. And I think that, he is athletic. He's going to have to play to his strengths, and that is going to mean that he's going to have to go after him early, in my opinion. Not recklessly. You see the head movement there, he sets shots up, but that's got to be a part of the game plan. Good head movement as well. Not bad head movement there. And especially when you're dealing with a man with a longer reach, like Chris Eubank Jr. has, you're going to have to use that to set these shots up. You can't just go walking forward and expect them not to get tagged. And Eubank Jr.'s jab has improved a lot over the years, to be fair to him. Conor Benn stalking him, tags him with the jab there. And another good job. And I like the way he just leaps into them. Those jabs aren't they're not trying to range find. He's literally tagging you hard with that jab. This is the finish, I think, coming up here with the big 1-2 against the ropes, and bloody hell. You blink and you'd have fucking missed that. That was fast. And I get, people have said that this is a bit tarnished because of the drug test failure. That makes sense. We're really not going to know if this was genuinely Conor Benn on his own. I'm assuming there's a lot of drug testing going on ahead of this fight. I doubt Eubank Jr. would have accepted it otherwise. So we're kind of not going to know what is the true Conor Benn until he's in there and see, can you replicate that speed, that explosiveness? Because in his last couple of fights, which I'm going to get onto, people had said that sort of power had left him. What you can't deny is it looked fucking amazing. And this is Conor Benn's last knockout before, the drug test failure against Chris Van Eerden. And as you see, once he hurts you, that finishing instinct is ferocious. Looked like a mini Mike Tyson there. So that's Eubank at his best, Conor Benn at his best. You could say, well, Eubank's was many years ago. Now he's an older fighter. With Conor Benn, you can say, well, he's failed a drug test since then. Is he really that guy? That's what makes this fight so interesting. Who can really perform at their very best in this fight? And how much will the weight be a factor? What we do know is when Chris Eubank fought Liam Smith in the first fight, people said that the weight was a massive factor because it was the first time Eubank Jr. had been stopped. Chris's tactics in this were all wrong, in my opinion, which I think does feed into, how was this allowed to happen? I think he tried to act like, this supreme boxer because he was getting trained by Roy Jones Jr. at the time. And Chris is actually, in my opinion, a better fighter than he is a boxer. And I think he was overconfident against someone who you just don't disrespect, right? Smith is a hard bastard. And he was just trying to, play with him a bit in there. And it's like his overconfidence got him fucked up. Whether or not the weight was an issue, his overconfidence made it a lot easier for Smith. And this is the finish here where Smith is, not the fastest, but certainly a strong puncher. And he's stalking him and moving him into this corner before unloading an absolute barrage of punches, which, something Conor Benn will probably look at and think, I could fucking do that. Can he hit as hard as Smith? I don't know, because it's a different weight class and fuck me. Benn is moving up, but that will give Ben confidence. The fact that you have not that long ago, only 2 years ago, been that concussed in the ring, and it was a good combination, which something I think Conor Benn is very good at, is what done the damage. This is one of the main reasons he wanted this fight. And to be fair, look, Eubank said, I wasn't out, I wanted to fight on. I do fucking respect that about him. And this was the rematch in round 8, where Liam Smith had honestly looked so fucked the whole fight. He looked injured. He did not look himself. It was a very comfortable fight for Chris Eubank, and it felt like he was in there with a bit of a sitting duck, to be honest. So that's when it becomes hard to give him credit, because the guy in front of you is clearly not the same guy that chinned you the last time out. So how do I gauge where you are right now? It does make it tricky. The one thing I will say is Eubank approached this fight a lot smarter, and he learned his lesson. There wasn't as much fucking around. Yes, Smith's still clipping him here and there, but he's behind the jab. He's a lot more sensible. He's not thinking he's Roy Jones reincarnate. And you can see here, he's just eventually busted Liam up a bit. And Liam took the shots like a man, like, to be fair to him. Even though he really had no hope of winning the fight, he just tried to survive as best as he could in there. And again, though, Eubank's accuracy is a weakness, in my opinion. He misses a lot, but that looked bad enough for the ref to go, nah, you're not going to win this fight. I need to protect you from yourself. I actually think Eubank, probably knowing the state Liam Smith was in, would have been slightly disappointed that he couldn't have been more devastating in the finish there. And for that reason, I can't take as much from that fight as probably I can from his last fight against Sheremetyev in Saudi. Now, this fight was, a fight to showcase him to the Saudi crowd and to set up this big fight with Conor Benn, and they squared off afterwards. And I was really interested to see, how is this time out of the ring affecting him? He's fighting once a year. He is getting older. And when you do have that inactivity, fighters sometimes slow down overnight. And when I watched him in this fight, I thought, you know what, Sheremetyev isn't bringing it here. He's clearly not the most aggressive fighter, is he? And he's giving you, time to kind of do what you want with him in there. He's showing some durability, but still, again, Eubank, he's getting tagged there a little bit. He didn't look as good as I think he could have done, given what was in front of him. And again, the accuracy of those shots does worry me a bit when you're coming into a mega fight like this. That lack of sharpness because of the inactivity, and they've both got this mind. I will say, Conor Benn also fighting once a year. I'm not just talking about the accuracy, I'm talking about the speed. He just looked like he'd slowed down. That fighter I showed you earlier here, he took a big whack there. The fighter I showed you earlier, where he was just pouring it on and coming forward like a man possessed in those fights, against George Groves, he doesn't look the same beast. He looks a bit more cleverer, to be fair to him. He looks a bit better technically. But as an animal, he doesn't... Yeah, it's a good one too, but I just thought you just don't look the same man anymore. And that's not to say that the man Chris Eubank is now won't still be enough to beat a Conor Benn who hasn't fought at the same level, is smaller than him, etc., etc. But it makes me think that this fight is going to be more competitive than a lot of other people have said it will be. Now, during the last couple of years, Conor Benn has been going through this drug issue, and he's managed to get a couple of fights in those 2 years. The first one being against Orozco, who, to be honest, was a very game lad, right? He wasn't just going to be bullied. I think a lot of people, look at that 1-2 would have fucked a lot of people up. He showed good heart and a good chin, this kid, but a lot of people, instead of giving the credit to him, kind of were looking, going, he doesn't hit the way he used to, because those shots in other fights have knocked people out. There is a possibility that this kid has just got a better chin and he's a bigger guy. I don't know, maybe Conor Benn just doesn't hit as hard. When you're a smaller guy moving up a weight class, the power, sometimes it just doesn't hit the same, right? We've seen that before. Again, Conor Benn, as with Eubank, he does take shots, right? That's what is going to make this fight so fucking entertaining. Neither of these is a defensive, master, but Conor is using some decent head movement there, and he's not when he's taking the shots, it's nothing to be. That was a good right hand. Again, Orozco is a fucking hard bastard, keeps coming forward. A lot of people have just read into this and went, you're not hitting the same after this drug issue. The one thing I wouldn't say is that Ben looks bad here. I don't think he's fighting bad. I think he's fighting quite smart defensively, and good head movement there. And that 1-2 rocks Orozco. Fuck me. Again, this right here, as much as you know, it's at a lesser weight class than what he's going to fight Eubank Jr. And he didn't finish the kid. That could have finished a lot of fighters. That was fucking serious. Ooh, I'm watching this now in round 9. And Conor is still banging quite hard. And one thing I will say about Conor Benn, he really strikes me as someone who works like a fucking demon in the gym. A lot of power punchers, people think, nah, he won't be able to continue like that. And obviously, like, everyone's power wanes a little bit, and you know, the speed can diminish as a fight goes on. That happens with every fighter. But I don't think it's as simple as Conor Benn can't win if the fight goes late, can't win if the fight goes to the judges. I believe he can. And he's looking fucking good here in this 9th round against a hard bastard who could take a shot. But I get it. Is he looking as good as when he was devastatingly knocking out the previous guys we've seen earlier? No, those finishes were fucking spectacular. But it is hard to do that every single fight. Like, how many people can do that every single time? It's not easy. And now, a word from our sponsors. If you want to watch live sport from around the world, no matter where you are, including those 3 p.m. kickoffs, Surfshark is the VPN for you. And when you click the link in the description below, you will get 4 months extra for free. Now, using a VPN online is basically like putting your pants on before you go out the door, right? Everything you want to keep private stays private. And Surfshark can change your virtual location in just 1 click. Whether you're wanting to watch US Netflix, or boxing in Vegas, or the UFC in Dubai, or English football at 3 p.m. on a Saturday, whatever you want, you can view it all with Surfshark. Surfshark can also mask your IP, and your traffic is encrypted, so all of your personal info stays private. And you can log into all your devices with just 1 subscription, which is very handy. So what you waiting for? Scan the QR code on screen now, or click the link in the description below. Go to surfshark.com/paingame and you'll get 4 extra months of Surfshark at an unbeatable price. But for now, enjoy the video. This fight against Dobson really got Conor Benn quite a bit of criticism because, again, all right, you didn't knock the last guy out. Surely you'll get a knockout this time. And he didn't. But I do think that Dobson was very smart in the way he approached this fight. In round 1, Dobson did not try to get a lot of offense going, right? It was a lot of move side to side, keep your hands up, and let the worst of Conor Benn's shots, you know, bounce off the shoulder, the gloves. And he was very good defensively. I was quite impressed with his defense. And if one of those shots had landed flush, maybe Conor Benn would have gotten the knockout, but it didn't really. And it was because Dobson knew there's a storm coming. And Eubank will also know this. But I'm not sure Eubank's defense is tight enough and good enough for him to not get clipped. I think Eubank is actually better. You know, his best defense is going forward and keeping punches going. So I don't think that this is a strategy that I would think that he would be able to do. And I actually don't think Conor Benn's going to give him too much of a fucking choice, to be honest. I mean, that was a decent shot with the left hand that really stunned Dobson and knocked him backwards a bit there in the 2nd round here. And Dobson did get some shots off here. You can see he's putting the pressure on in the mid-rounds against Benn. And we did see Benn look a little bit more vulnerable in this fight than we've seen him since, you know, he matured and went to a higher level. And I do get that's why some people would look at that and go, if he can do that to you, Eubank, bigger, you know, more accomplished fighter than Dobson, he could hurt you. And that is a possibility. Like, and this is Conor Benn in round 8 in this fight. You know, and a reason I'm showing this is, again, is the narrative is early Conor, later it's all Eubank. And I think Conor looks good in round 8. Yeah, he looks fast. He doesn't look like someone who has spent all his energy and can't still bang. He's definitely can. And look, I get Eubank, his level is higher than Dobson, right? This isn't, it's just not a like for like. But this is round 11 now, and Eubank's still got some zip in those shots. Still, you know, head movement, footwork. It hasn't just collapsed because he's getting tired. He's holding his shape well. This performance was highly criticised. I think he still showed a lot in there. And look, it's not all about size and reach and height and who's faster and who's stronger and all of this stuff. It's a lot of this is mental. And I think this fight in particular is possibly more mental than most fights we'll ever see. This is 2 lads who 30 years after their fathers fought are walking in their dad's shoes, trying to fulfill that legacy of becoming top dog and showing my family owns your family, right? And there's a lot of pressure that comes with that. It's different kind of pressure. It's not just monetary. It's not just for a belt. It's about wanting to make your dad proud. And fuck me, does that weigh heavy on a son's shoulders? That is some different level pressure than what you'd usually see in there. And I do think that one of the contributing factors into the mind games here that you see Chris Eubank playing towards Conor Benn. Chris Eubank is the aggressor. He's been fantastically entertaining with everything he's done, and I've thoroughly enjoyed the build-up, I can't lie. But I think the reason he is the aggressor is because he has the more to lose here emotionally. I think if Conor Benn loses this fight, his dad will give him a big hug and tell him, son, it doesn't matter. I love you. You tried. I'm proud of you. There is no, I told you so. There is no kicking him while he's down. Eubank Sr. is kicking Eubank Jr. on the way to the ring, telling him he's a disgrace, let alone if he fucking loses. He's saying, you should not be taking this fight. In previous interviews, I think I haven't seen them, but allegedly he said, and I think that this could be a bad fight for my son. And maybe that's why he really doesn't want it happening, despite him talking about the rules without clarifying any fucking rule that he's on about. The point is, I think there's more pressure on Eubank Jr., which is why he's trying to amp the pressure up on Conor Benn so that he can feel it too. Because if Conor Benn loses, I went up a couple of weight classes. I'm at the start of my career. I could still fucking challenge for world titles. There's still plenty for me to do. If Chris Eubank loses, his career, and I'm not just exaggerating here, is effectively over. Yeah, he may do another, rematch for a payday. It's fucking done. And it's not just about his career being over. It's the legacy he leaves behind. Not only will people now say when he rose to the highest level, he lost, yada, yada, yada. They'll now throw the fact that you fucked your dad's legacy up against Nigel Benn's son. That is not going to go down well in hindsight. So there's so much pressure on Eubank Jr. And don't get me wrong, I think he's a cool motherfucker and I think he'll probably handle it well. And I think he will be able to fight to his full potential in there. He's got a lot of experience with these big arenas and, this is even for him a bigger level again, man. This is a fucking stadium full. I'm going to be there. I can't fucking wait. Conor Benn, on the other hand, not as much experience. Will he be able to calm his emotions and his energy down enough to think clearly? I want him to be angry. I want him to be ferocious, because that's him at his best, but not to a point of recklessness. So I do think that the state of mind that both fighters are in will have an impact on this. And if there is an edge to give to Conor Benn, is I do think there's less pressure. And I do think in the last 5 years, his hunger for boxing has been greater than Eubank's. I think Eubank, could have gone a bit further in his career if he had have been desperate to get his hands on a world title. Maybe he wouldn't have won one, but maybe we would have seen more from him. I think Conor has a little bit more hunger than he does. I will give that slight edge to him. So who do I think will win? Look, they're both very hittable, and which makes this a fucking great fight. And for that reason, I could imagine any way of winning for either fighter. Like it literally is that open, because they're not perfect fighters, which is what's beautiful about this. When I'm predicting an Usyk fight, it's pretty fucking straightforward for me. Like in the past, despite him being an underdog, I know the skill set. This skill set, there's a lot more holes in. And I will warn you, if you're considering betting on my pick, probably don't, because I have this thing where I love picking the underdog, because I think in some stupid way it makes me more clever if they win, but it doesn't really make a difference. But in this instance, I kind of do prefer Conor Benn, but not just because he's the underdog. I like the way he throws punches more. There's times where Eubank is a little more clumsy. He's not as precise with his accuracy. I think Conor Benn turns his whole body into those punches, right? I much prefer the way they look in terms of technically. I feel like he is the one who has been coached the better into just how to throw the punches properly. And look, as I said, you can overcommit when you do that, but fuck me, it's fun to watch. And I get it, right? That he's a smaller guy. And a lot of people have said the size of Eubank will just be too big of a bridge to cross for Conor Benn. And that might be true, but I think generally when we compare fighters who one's coming up a weight class, when we talk about size, what we're really meaning is what that size can do. The strength, the punching power. Does Chris Eubank have notoriously hard punching power? I don't think so. He's got a lot of finishers, but he has fought a lot of cherry-picked fighters as well. He's never been the hardest puncher, in my opinion. And look, maybe with a smaller guy in there, maybe he will be a harder puncher than what he has been previously. But that's not what he's relied on in his career. career, the things he's relied on are, in my opinion, his stamina, which has been brilliant earlier on in his career, and his chin, which has been fucking granite for the majority of his career. The problem with those two things is I have seen a bit of weakness in both of those lately. Against Sheremetha, he didn't look like he had that next gear to really pour it on. A guy who was kind of just sitting there, right? The stamina wasn't where it used to be, in my opinion. And against Liam Smith in that first fight, the chin now, you see a weakness there where he has been severely hurt early on in the fight. And that now leaves question marks on his chin. But that's not really the thing that's been making me want to lean towards Conor Benn even. Like, when I've been watching these videos on YouTube, seeing what other people are saying, the thing that surprised me the most is how many people have given the speed advantage to Chris Eubank Jr. And I've been like, have you watched Chris Eubank Jr. lately? I know young Chris Eubank Jr. was quick, but let's take a look at what they look like in recent fights. So this is round 6 of Eubank against Sheremetha, right? You see him getting tagged there. And I just want you to pay attention to how quick his hands are, just how quick he is in general. I just don't think he looks that quick at all, right? And this is halfway into the fight, right? This isn't like 12th round. Now look at Conor Benn in the 8th round, where he's expended 6 minutes more energy. Look at how quick look at the fucking speed compared, like, Chris Eubank looks like he's in slow motion compared to this kid. It's not even close. And this is, you know, after expending more energy. All right, this is Eubank here in the 9th round against Liam Smith. And like, obviously, Liam Smith had not exerted a lot of energy and put it on him, so this is as fresh as you could possibly be in the 9th round. And Eubank, yeah, he's doing all right, but, you know, speed-wise, again, it's nothing fucking ferocious. This is the 9th round in Conor Benn's fight against Orozco, and, like, you just see the fucking speed difference, in my opinion. I see a clear difference in there, probably more than any other attribute between the two fighters. I could be wrong. Like, obviously, size is important and experience is important and all the other factors that most people are pushing towards. I'm not discounting them, but I just think that that is the thing that could be the difference, because the old saying goes in boxing, speed killed. And I think that might be the situation that we find ourselves in on Saturday night. I'm picking Conor Benn by knockout. Let me know what you think in the comments below. I hope I've made a compelling case and it's at least entertained us, even if I get it completely fucking wrong. We'll find out, and you'll be able to find out with me on the live stream Saturday night, live from the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium. I cannot fucking wait. Let me know your predictions and why in the comments below. Hit that like button, subscribe to the Pain Game YouTube channel. I'll see you there.